A quick flash of brown, almost undetectable, darted behind the knothole in the fence. My heart halted for a moment, then began to beat a bit faster than usual. I sat upright and focused on the fence. The hole was small, perhaps the size of a coin, yet it was positioned right at eye level, accessible if someone stood on the other side and leaned in closely. I waited for any sign of movement. Nothing. I rose and approached it, feigning an interest in the plants along the fence line. As I neared, I slowed my pace, ensuring my footsteps did not crunch too loudly on the gravel. Upon reaching the location, I crouched down and peered through. Nothing, just an empty backyard next door. I exhaled and chuckled softly to myself. Perhaps I was losing my mind, overanalyzing, fabricating stories in my mind to alleviate the monotony. However, the following day, it occurred again. I was shirtless, weeding along the fence when I sensed it, that same tingling sensation creeping over my skin. Without a second thought, I glanced at the hole. This time, I caught sight of it. A solitary eye, dark brown, wide and motionless, gazing at me. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. My stomach nodded. I halted mid-action, my hands still clutching a handful of weeds. Slowly. Too slowly. The eye blinked, then vanished as whoever it was withdrew from the fence. I remained there, heart racing. My initial reaction was anger. Who on earth spies on their neighbor like that? Yet beneath the anger, there was something else. A flicker of curiosity and perhaps something warmer, something I ought not to feel. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, replaying the moment in my mind. The eye. The way it lingered on me just a moment too long. Who could it be? I was aware that the family next door had a teenage son. I had seen him a few times, always clad in baggy hoodies, earbuds inserted, keeping to himself. His name was Ryan, 18 if I recalled correctly. The realization caused my heart to skip a beat. Could it genuinely be him? The next morning, I decided to test the theory. I donned a loose pair of shorts, completely foregoing the shirt. My 18-year-old neighbor observes me through the hole in the fence daily. Consequently, I took action. I never anticipated that something like this would occur to me. Every afternoon, like clockwork, I would catch a sight of him. Those inquisitive eyes peering through the small opening in the wooden fence that divided our yards. Initially, I dismissed it. I believed it was merely coincidence. However, as the days went by, the reality became undeniable. My 18-year-old neighbor was monitoring me. Each and every day, every time I stepped outside, every time I removed my shirt to tend to the garden or relaxed by the pool with a book, I sensed it. His gaze, concentrated, intent, almost yearning for something he did not dare to request. And the most troubling part, a part of me enjoyed it. So what actions did I take when I finally recognized he was doing this intentionally? What transpired the day I approached that fence and gazed back at him through the same hole? Stay with me because what occurred next will alter everything you believe you know about control, temptation, and what happens when you cease pretending you don't notice. If you have ever pondered what it feels like to turn the tables on someone who has been secretly observing you, you will not want to miss a moment of this narrative. Therefore, ensure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications. Because once you learn how far this escalated, you will not believe how it concludes. It began small, hardly noticeable. Indeed, a slight crack in the wooden fence that divided my backyard from the neighboring house. I recall the first time I sensed it, that peculiar prickling sensation along the back of my neck, like someone's eyes were on me, watching, studying. Initially, I dismissed it. Perhaps it was just paranoia. After all, I worked from home, spent most of my afternoons out here basking in the sun or watering the plants. It was not uncommon for neighbors to glance over occasionally, but this felt different. One Saturday afternoon, while I was reclining on a lounge chair, scrolling through my phone, I caught the first glimpse and stepped outside. With a cup of coffee as if it were any ordinary day, I positioned myself by the fence, intentionally stretching, providing a clear view of my back and shoulders. And just like clockwork, there it was, the shadow of movement behind the wood, the faintest sound of a foot shifting on gravel. My heart raced. I turned quickly. I locked eyes with him for just half a second before he stumbled backward, knocking something over on his side of the yard. I smiled to myself. So, it was Ryan. Now, the question was not whether he was observing me. It was how far he was prepared to go, and how far I was willing to allow this to continue. The game had begun, and tomorrow I intended to make the next move. The following morning, I awoke with a strategy. I spent a bit more time than usual selecting my outfit. Something casual yet suggestive. A loose tank top that revealed just enough of my chest and sides whenever I moved, and a pair of gym shorts that sat low on my hips. I told myself it was merely to be comfortable in the summer heat, but deep down I recognized it was for him. I stepped outside as if it were any other day. Coffee in hand, sunglasses on. The sun was already high, and the air was fragrant with fresh cut grass from the neighbor's yard. I lingered near the fence. I feigned inspecting the flowers lining the walkway, kneeling down in just the right spot so the hole in the fence was at the ideal angle. I knew he was present. I couldn't see him, but I could sense him. The stillness on the other side, that charged electric kind of silence. I remained there longer than necessary, pulling at the dirt with my fingers, allowing the muscles in my arms to flex naturally as I moved. I kept my head low, but my smile was impossible to conceal. Then, a sound, the soft crunch of footsteps. I froze, my heart racing. Was he approaching? Gradually, I raised my gaze toward the hole. For the briefest moment I caught sight of him. Brown eyes, flushed cheeks, a strand of dark hair falling across his forehead. Ryan. He recoiled so quickly that I heard something fall over on his side of the fence once more. This time, it appeared to be a plastic chair striking the ground. I stood there, brushing the dirt off my hands, unable to suppress the laughter bubbling in my throat. The game had officially commenced, and I was relishing every moment of it. For the remainder of the day, I remained indoors, yet my thoughts kept wandering back to him. What was going through his mind? Was he feeling embarrassed, intrigued, regretting his actions? Or perhaps replaying the sight I had shown him that morning? By late afternoon, I resolved to push the boundaries just a bit further. I retrieved an old basketball from the garage and ventured out to the small section of driveway adjacent to the fence. I dribbled a few times, tossing the ball toward the hoop that was mounted over my garage door. The sun beat down on my skin, sweat quickly accumulating on my chest and neck. After a few shots, I paused, removing my tank top completely and tossing it onto the grass. Now I stood shirtless, just feet away from the fence, fully aware that he was likely back at his usual spot. I stretched. Slow, deliberate movements, allowing every muscle to roll beneath my skin. I ran a hand through my hair and turned, feigning a casual glance around. And that's when I spotted him, not through the hole this time, but standing in full view, right in his backyard. He froze when our eyes met, utterly caught. He was gripping a garden hose, as if he had been pretending to water the grass, but the nozzle dangled limply in his hand. Forgotten? I raised an eyebrow, half challenging, half inviting. "Hey," I called out, my voice light, playful. His face turned crimson. Hey," he replied, almost choking on the word. For a moment, neither of us moved. I could see the panic in his eyes, as if he wanted to flee inside, disappear, but something held him there. Something stronger than fear. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps something more. I stepped closer to the fence, resting my hand on the wood. "It seems we finally caught each other," I said, smiling. His mouth opened as if he intended to speak, but no words emerged. Before he could muster the courage, I heard another voice from within his home. A woman, likely his mother. "Ryan, dinner's ready." He flinched at the sound and turned towards the door, fumbling with the hose and dropping it completely in his haste. "Coming," he shouted in response. And just like that, he disappeared. I remained there, my heart racing, gazing at the vacant space where he had stood only moments earlier. For the first time since this entire situation began, I questioned whether I had overstepped my bounds. Yet, even as doubt began to seep in, one thing was certain. Tomorrow, I would not relent. The following morning, I reassured myself that I would take a step back. Perhaps I would allow him some distance after what transpired the day before. However, that resolution lasted a mere 5 minutes. As soon as I passed by the window and noticed his bedroom curtains fluttering, the familiar urge returned, the curiosity, the desire to probe just a bit more. Around noon, I ventured outside once more. This time, I took a lawn chair and positioned it right by the fence, close enough for him to hear every sound I made, every breath, every slight movement. I reclined, closed my eyes, and allowed the sun to warm my skin. However, I was not truly at ease. Every sense was heightened, anticipating the slightest indication of his presence. And sure enough, after a few moments, there it was, the faintest shuffle, barely perceptible, but it was there. I smiled to myself, then sat up, feigning interest in my phone. I adjusted my chair slightly closer to the fence, then reached up and removed my tank top once more, allowing it to drop to the ground as if it were inconsequential. I tilted my head back, releasing a soft, contented sigh. "Hot day," I remarked loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear. Moments later, I heard something unexpected. His voice. "Yeah, it is." I froze. For a brief moment, I questioned whether I had imagined it, but no. I turned my head towards the fence, and there he was. Standing fully visible this time. No more concealment. No more peering through small holes. Ryan, dressed in a snug white t-shirt that hugged his chest in a manner that indicated he had developed more than I had previously noticed. His dark hair was tousled, as if he had just gotten out of bed. There was a palpable nervous energy in the way he shifted from one foot to the other. I blinked, uncertain of what to say. Before I could formulate a response, he spoke again. "I apologize for yesterday. I didn't intend to, you know." He trailed off, his cheeks turning that same shade of pink I was beginning to recognize. I decided to ease the situation for him. "It's all right," I said, offering a half smile. "I assumed you would show up sooner or later." That elicited a reaction. His eyes widened, and he opened his mouth as if he wanted to object, but then closed it again. He ran a hand through his hair, laughing awkwardly. "I suppose I wasn't very discreet." "Huh? Not particularly," I replied, chuckling. softly. A lengthy pause settled between us, the kind that feels both tense and electric. Simultaneously, I could see him, swallowing hard, his gaze dropping briefly to my bare chest before snapping back up. I should probably take my leave, he mumbled, turning to depart. But for some reason, I stood up. Without thinking, I reached over the top of the fence, grabbing his wrist just before he could step away. His skin was warm, soft, yet tense under my fingers. He froze for a moment, 2 moments, 3. Neither of us moved. I felt his pulse quicken beneath my touch, and I realized this wasn't merely in my imagination. He turned slowly, his face now only inches from mine, separated solely by the thin barrier of aged wood and air. His breathing altered, becoming shallow, unsteady. And then it occurred. His other hand lifted toward mine. His fingers grazed over my knuckles. Tentative, exploring. It wasn't a coincidence. I was aware of it. He was aware of it. But just as swiftly, he withdrew. I really must leave, he said, his voice low, almost strained. And before I could respond, he was gone again, slipping inside his house, leaving me standing there with my heart racing harder than it had in months. I remained there for an extended period, gazing at the location where he had just been, my fingers still tingling from his touch, the first time it had happened. I was uncertain about who was pursuing whom at that moment, and an instinct warned me that tomorrow would only escalate the situation. That night I hardly slept. I kept replaying the moment repeatedly. The way his fingers had glided over mine for that single electrifying second. It was not a mistake. It was not merely a friendly gesture. It was something more, something intentional. By the time morning arrived, I had resolved my thoughts. No more games, no more pretense. If he intended to test limits, I was prepared to meet him halfway. I ventured outside earlier than usual, right after breakfast. The sky was still faint, and the air was fragrant with dew and freshly cut grass. I positioned myself by the fence once more, but this time I had my phone and a small portable speaker with me. I set up a playlist of slow, relaxing music and sat cross-legged in the sunlight, my back leaning against the wooden boards. I did not have to wait long. Within moments, I detected movement on the other side. However, today felt different. There were voices, not just his. Another boy, loud and jovial, joking about something I could not discern. I frowned and stood up, curiosity drawing me closer to the fence. Peering through the hole, I glimpsed Ryan and another boy, tall with short blonde hair and a confident grin that caused my stomach to tighten for reasons I could not fully comprehend. They were tossing a football back and forth in Ryan's backyard, both laughing like old friends. I did not recognize the other boy. Perhaps a schoolmate, a teammate. I stepped back, my heart sinking slightly. So, this was how he spent his time when he was not observing me, behaving like any other 18-year-old, socializing, laughing, being ordinary. I attempted to dismiss the feeling, but jealousy weighed heavily in my chest. Then something occurred that intensified my discomfort. They ceased playing. Ryan said something I could not hear, then pointed toward the fence, toward me. The other boy turned, grinning. His eyes narrowed as if he already understood the joke. I became motionless. Were they discussing me? Had Ryan revealed something to him? Shared a tale about the peculiar older neighbor next door? My stomach churned. I picked up my tank top from the ground and turned to go inside. However, just as I reached the back door, a football struck the fence with a loud, echoing thud. I spun around. Ryan was there, gazing at me over the fence with wide eyes. The ball had evidently slipped. Or perhaps it hadn't. "Sorry," he quickly called out, his voice cracking slightly. "I wasn't aiming for that." The other guy erupted in laughter behind him. I forced a tight smile. No problem, I replied, raising a hand. It happens. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me with more force than necessary. My chest felt constricted, conflicted. Was he teasing me now, using our little game as a joke to impress his friend? Or was this something entirely different? For the next hour, I paced within my house, unable to concentrate on anything. The more I pondered it, the more it gnawed at me. Every glance, every word, every accidental touch from the past week. Was any of it genuine? I was reluctant to admit it, but I felt hurt. I walked back outside just as the sun began to descend lower in the sky. The yard was now quiet. His friend had departed. The house next door appeared still. And then, a voice came from behind me. Hey! I turned around. Ryan was standing by the fence, but not in his usual spot. He had approached from the side gate into my yard. My heart stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding eye contact with me. Sorry about earlier, he said softly. That wasn't cool. I didn't want him to know about, me watching. I remained silent, waiting, until his eyes finally met mine. I don't usually do this, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't stop. I took a step closer, close enough to notice how his chest rose and fell a little too quickly. And now? I asked. He swallowed hard. Now I don't want to stop. Before I could utter anything further, footsteps echoed from the front of his house. A car door slammed shut. His mother. Ryan, can you assist me with the groceries? His eyes widened in alarm. Without a moment's hesitation, he seized my wrist. For a brief instant, his fingers clutched mine tightly. Then he released me and dashed towards his front door, leaving me there, breathless and more bewildered than ever. As I stood there, watching him vanish inside, I came to a chilling realization. I didn't want him to stop either. The following 2 days were agonizing. I didn't see him, not even once. I checked the backyard every hour like a restless teenager, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. But the curtains in his room remained drawn. No more movement near the fence. No soft footsteps on the gravel. Nothing. The silence drove me to madness. Had I frightened him away? Had that last moment, the way he grasped my wrist, been too overwhelming for him? Or was it something else? Perhaps his friend had mentioned something. Maybe he felt remorse. Perhaps he regretted everything. By the third day, I could no longer endure it. I slipped on my sneakers, grabbing a jacket, and resolved to take a walk around the block to clear my mind. As I turned the corner near his house, I slowed down, and that was when I spotted him. Ryan, sitting on the curb, head bowed, earbuds dangling from his hands instead of resting in his ears. He appeared lost in contemplation, gazing at the pavement as if it held all the answers he was unable to find. For a moment I thought about walking past without uttering a word, allowing him his space. But my feet had other plans. Hey, I said, halting in front of him. His head snapped up so quickly it startled me. His eyes widened as if seeing me here was both his greatest fear and secret desire, all at once. Hey, he exhaled, voice raspy as if he hadn't used it in hours. I settled down beside him, close enough for our shoulders to nearly touch. Neither of us spoke initially. The air between us felt dense, charged, dangerous. At last, he released a shaky breath. I've been contemplating, he spoke, gazing straight ahead regarding the situation. I remained silent, allowing him to proceed. Initially, I was unsure why I acted that way while observing you. I understand now, but he chuckled nervously, rubbing his hands against his jeans. It was foolish and unsettling. I understand if you despise me for it. I slowly shook my head. I do not despise you, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, finally meeting my gaze after days of avoidance. I suppose I merely wanted to see you, he confessed, his eyes briefly flickering to my mouth before darting away. And when you noticed, I was at a loss for how to stop. The vulnerability in his tone struck me like a blow to the chest. I swallowed hard. Ryan. Before I could complete my thought, a car horn blared from the end of the street. We both startled, turning to see a neighbor waving from their driveway, completely oblivious to the weight of the moment we had just shared on the curb. Ryan abruptly stood up, shoving his hands into his pockets. I have to leave, he muttered. However, just before departing, he turned back, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear, and whispered, Can I see you later? Tonight. I nodded, my heart racing. Yes. As I observed him walk away, I realized that tonight everything was about to change. That evening, I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone. My heart raced with each passing second. Would he arrive? Would he truly follow through? Just as doubt began to creep in, a gentle knock at my back door prompted me to open it. And there he was. Ryan stood there, his hoodie pulled over his head as if trying to conceal himself from the world. But when he looked up at me, his eyes conveyed everything. Without uttering a word, I stepped aside, allowing him entry. The room felt smaller with him present, yet warmer. For a long moment, we stood there face to face, our hearts racing. Then he moved closer, close enough for me to feel the warmth emanating from his skin. His voice trembled as he whispered, I do not wish to hide any longer. Before I could reply, he leaned in, closing the distance between us. Our lips touched, initially hesitant yet intensifying with each passing moment. No more uncertainty. No more barriers separating us. No more hidden truths. Just the two of us. At last.